Every 4 years, the whole world seems to catch the same fever. Strangers hug, coworkers skip lunch to watch one match, someone's grandmother cries over a missed penalty kick. Right in the middle of all that noise sits Zeno, calm, maybe even a little confused why everyone is so worked up over a ball in a net. People call Zeno cold. Some worry something is wrong. But here is the strange part. The psychology says Zeno might be the normal one. So what is really happening inside the brain of every fan screaming at a television Zeno just cannot follow? There's actually a name for what's happening inside every screaming fan. Psychologists call it basking in reflected glory, or burging for short. Back in 1976, a researcher named Robert Cialdini noticed something interesting on college campuses. Students were far more likely to wear their school's team jacket the day after a win than the day after a loss. These students hadn't played a single minute. Many hadn't even watched the game. But somehow, standing close to a win made it feel like their own. Our sense of self is surprisingly flexible that way. When the team wins, people say, "We won." When the team loses, the language quietly shifts. Suddenly it's, "They played badly," not "we played badly." The ego slides out of the way before the loss can stick. This isn't really about being fake or dishonest. It's simply how group identity works in the human brain. This shows how much people lean on groups to manage their own self-esteem, often without realizing it. So where does that leave Zeno, the person who watched the same final and felt absolutely nothing at all? Here's the thing. Sports fandom is just one way of meeting a much older need. The need to belong to something bigger than yourself. That need doesn't disappear just because someone skips the World Cup. It's still there, quietly working in the background. Zeno has probably just built that sense of belonging somewhere else entirely. Maybe it's a tight friend group, a hobby nobody else really gets, a hometown that has nothing to do with sports, or a job Zeno cares about a little too much. The need is the same need a stadium full of screaming fans is satisfying. It's only the address that's different. People who don't follow the World Cup aren't missing out on connection. They've simply chosen a different place to put it. And honestly, once you look closely, jerseys and face paint start to seem like a pretty strange container for something as deep as belonging. Now let's look at what's happening inside the brain of a fan during a close match. When the outcome is genuinely uncertain, the brain stays in a kind of waiting mode, and that waiting itself feels rewarding. Studies show the brain's reward system fires up not only when something good happens, but simply while waiting to find out if it will. This unpredictability is the exact same mechanism that makes slot machines so hard to put down. You don't know if the next spin pays off, so your brain stays hooked, just in case. A last-minute goal, a missed penalty, a draw that suddenly isn't a draw anymore. These moments hit the brain the same way a near win at a casino does. But here's the key part. None of this works without an attachment forming first. If Zeno never picked a side, there's no stake in the outcome, and without a stake, uncertainty doesn't feel thrilling. It just feels like watching a coin flip for 90 minutes straight. This is exactly why Zeno's calm reaction isn't some kind of broken wiring. The hook never had anything to grab onto. There's something else going on with the World Cup specifically, something that doesn't show up the same way in regular club soccer. Every 4 years, people are suddenly expected to care, because now it isn't just a team, it's a whole country, a flag, an identity carried by 11 strangers. For some fans, that national layer makes the whole thing hit even harder. For others, it actually makes things more confusing. Nobody picks where they're born, and plenty of people have complicated feelings about their own home country. Being told to feel personally victorious because a stranger from the same passport kicked a ball into a net just doesn't add up emotionally for everyone. That doesn't mean those people don't care about where they come from. It just means their relationship with it is messier than a flag sewn onto a jersey can really capture. Here's something that tends to genuinely surprise people. This whole deeply emotional attachment to strangers playing a game on a screen is actually a pretty recent invention in human history. For almost all of human existence, you couldn't follow a team because the idea of a team you'd never meet didn't really exist yet. Feeling someone else's win as your own win, or their loss as your own quiet grief, only became possible once television let millions of people watch the same strangers at the same time. Researchers named Horton and Wohl were already writing about this back in the 1950s, describing a brand new kind of one-sided emotional bond between an audience and people on a screen. So when fandom gets called some ancient, hardwired instinct, the tribal piece of it is real, but the jerseys, the face paint, and the heartbreak over millionaires losing a match are really a 20th century invention, not something carved into us since the beginning. To be fair, that invention does real good for plenty of people. Research shows fans who feel strongly connected to a team often report higher self-esteem and less loneliness. That sense of shared meaning works like a kind of social lifeline, and that's worth taking seriously rather than brushing aside. The real difference isn't between people who care and people who don't. It's between identity that actually fits and identity that's only borrowed because everyone else in the room expects it. A fan who genuinely lights up when their country scores is getting something real out of that moment. The person standing right next to them, faking heartbreak because saying, "I don't really care," feels socially risky, is the one quietly running on empty. And that gap between what's real and what's just performed ends up mattering far more than whether someone watches the World Cup at all. Which brings us back to Zeno, sitting calm through the whole tournament, not because something is missing, but because attachment showed up somewhere else first. So what does this really come down to? The psychology of not caring about the World Cup is not about being more or less aware than anyone else. Some collective moments simply land, and others do not, and you cannot force the landing. That is not the same as being numb to everything. It is a sign that Zeno's attachment system already found its place somewhere else. Zeno is not wired wrong. Zeno is just elsewhere. And if you already know where that is, that was the whole point of fandom all along. So tell me, where does yours live?